right, and I'm live. I'm here without Cam right now. He's not here yet, so I thought I would just start it up. Did he just send me a message? Send it via email? What? God, okay. Um, but I'm here. I'm live. Just gonna let people trick it in, and we're starting in a few minutes. Today, I got some of this stuff in a video that I'm going to be dropping. That's already recorded and edited with him, but I did this live so that people could ask questions if they had them, and we could go into a little bit more detail. Yeah, got here, so I'm just waiting. Mayans in the Mississippi River Valley, man. It's pretty crazy. I'm wearing a t-shirt again. Very rarely do that, but it's hot in here and I can't turn the AC on while I'm live. How's my audio doing? I should check that myself. Listen in on that. Oh, it sounds pretty good. Alrighty then. And all right. I'm just gonna, in the meantime, gonna open this up while I wait for him. Gonna share some of these images, if it would open up. Oh my God, why does it have to go full screen? That's fine, there's no private information there. So one of the things we're going to be talking about today, which is the subject of that standalone video that I'm going to have up soon, is this rattlesnake disc. And this rattlesnake disc here, there's a lot of interesting stuff about it, but Cam described it as a glorified paperweight before. You know, it's got these little notches in them at regular intervals. I think they're regular intervals, pretty regular. Okay. Cam's here. Hey Cam, how you doing? Can you hear me? We're live already, by the way. Can you hear me? Every time. Okay, well, my audio's working. I know mine's working. So yours, it must be off on you. I can hear your audio. I think. I just heard clicking. Okay. I could communicate with you. I don't know if he knows to look in the private chat. You gotta check the settings on StreamYard. I know you can't hear me.
Can you hear me?
Now, yeah, can hear you. Can you hear me? You might have to Settings. Yeah, and we can hear you. This is the kind of stuff we're going to be looking at today. These different discs, some of them from the Mississippi River Valley, some of them from this one being from the Mississippi River Valley, other ones being Mayan constellations. This is
I can
archaeoastronomy.
hear you now.
Oh, you can? Great. Okay.
Yeah, cool.
All right.
All
Well,
right.
so this, a lot of this information is edited down into another video that I'm going to be posting standalone. But if we do this live, then people can ask questions and we can talk about other cultural implications. But we'll be touching on some of the same stuff. So that being said, where do you want to start?
Well, I don't know if you introduced me yet or not because I
No, yeah,
couldn't hear you before.
yeah. Go
My
ahead.
name, my name is Cameron McConnell. I am an archaeologist. I am a grad student. I'm trying to finish my PhD right now. I'm about probably just a few months away from submitting all my work, and maybe at tops a year from completing the PhD. My focus has been on mound building cultures and the connection between, in my personal opinion, the connection between those and Mesoamerican culture. That's been my main focus. And of course, I've been doing other work as well, but mostly dealing with symbolism and ecological systems and shamanism as well too.
And what specifically is your PhD research in?
Um, my main focus has been in mound builders, specifically the rattlesnake disc.
Right. So this thing right here, the
Yes.
rattlesnake disc. Yeah. Okay. And so the Mississippi culture, I think most people are aware of it, but just if you're not, it's this culture here. They collapsed like what 1350, probably coincides with the little ice age that we had in the time of the High Middle Ages. And the end of them came around then, and then the remnants of that civilization, which were likely still around in a significant way, were kind of wiped out probably by De Soto, if or De Soto and his the animals, the conquistador De Soto, and the animals that spread out from his expedition in the early 1500s. That's fair
I
to
would
say, right?
argue that some remnants probably lasted all the way till more than likely the 1600s, like you had at Moundville, Alabama.
Okay.
Um, you could make a case that disease wiped out the vast majority that was left over. What happened at Cahokia, on the other hand, may have been, according to Timothy Pocketot out of, I believe he's at WashU, um, a lot of that stuff may have happened due to flooding up there. But
Oh.
a lot of people think that for some reason their Mississippian culture or Southeast Sacramento culture all happened at the same time. It really didn't. It
Hmm.
was various pieces of it occurred at the same time, but some rose and fell in some parts of the civilizations at other times. So what was going on in Moundville may have overlapped a bit with Cahokia, but not completely, not totally at the same time.
Okay.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, DeSoto is not as talked about. Yeah, that makes sense, especially with how widespread the Mississippian culture was. Like many other cultures, they're not like the Aztecs, and neither are the Mayans. They weren't an empire. They were pretty widespread and had a little variance between them, but there were similar cultural traits between these cultures with the continuity of various phases for like what 2,000 years maybe because there was there were earlier mound builders, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you go all the way back to Poverty Point, and maybe even before that, you had earthwork structures going back maybe as much as 3000 BC. But we see a lot, or even before that. But what we see for the most part, there is a starting of mound building culture going all the way back past the woodlands. All right. A good example of this is the stuff you see in Ohio. You have a lot of effigy mounds in Ohio of a variety of sorts. All right, that coincide with the woodland, the woodland civilizations of that time frame. And you have like, for example, Serpent Mound. Okay, Serpent Mound was probably created.
Uh-oh. I lost you, Cam. Am I still here? I lost Cam. Is that me? Oh, no. What's going on? What's going on here? I'm back.
I'm back. Can you see me?
Yeah, I got you. Okay. Yep.
Let me see if I can get a good reference for this. Hang on one second. All right. Woodland period roughly runs between 1000. The woodland period roughly runs between 1000 AD forward. All right, and it also includes Mississippian culture. What I'm really referring to is the time really before that, and talk about early woodland, which runs about 1000 to 200 BC. And within this time frame, we're talking about Adena and stuff like that. You had a lot of different cultures, or we had a lot of different groups that were building these effigy mounds, not just in Ohio, but all across the area of the maps you see there. But mostly we see it across the area of Ohio. And one of the most famous ones, of course, is the Serpent Mound. And the Serpent Mound probably was built sometime around roughly 1 to 200 BC, and then was probably fixed again sometime around, more likely sometime around 1000 AD. So these mound structures have been a part of the cultures of Native Americans for a very, very long time. For going back at least 2,000 years. And I would make the argument that you have, this is a part of their belief system that has been going on for a very, very long time. If any of that makes any sense.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. And
yeah.
this is throughout, like you can see on the map that obviously it's not the entire United States. You have like this area here, but up here you have like the Wendat and the Iroquois, Haudenosaunee, and the Eastern Algonquins in New England, and then farther west you have, out to the plains you have separate cultures in the Pacific Northwest. There's a bunch of others, but it's definitely the largest single culture, and it's not a single culture, but the largest, like, you know, by land area, the largest North American expansive, broader culture
Yeah,
there. It's
what
yeah,
makes them connected though is the symbolism of religious beliefs.
hmm
That's what's making them connected. They're sharing a system of beliefs. They're sharing a system of ideology. They're sharing a system of corn. Sharing a system of a variety of things that are related to how they're producing food. Okay,
right. And
and go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was only going to say that what we have to come to the conclusion of is that what they're doing is they're emulating or have been taught this type of cultural belief system from somewhere else, right? And probably it came with the corn, all right? When corn started migrating, domestication occurred in Mexico, of course, and from Teosinte, and it started domesticating and moving its way up into North America, up into the areas we call the Southeast Central, the SECC and the Mississippian cultures. When that started moving up that way, you can't just give people corn and go, okay, well, here it is, start planting. Okay. There's stuff that went along with that, which would be the religious beliefs. The religious beliefs that went with corn taught them how to make and how to grow the corn and how to domesticate it. Okay.
Right.
So a lot of those symbols, ideas, belief systems, specifically like about the notion of the idea of the horned feathered serpent, stuff like that, that which was the god of the corn out of Mesoamerica. Those ideas spread to the northern areas as well. Okay,
Right.
and
And
that's
and
where a
at
lot
the
of
time it coincides with the start of cultivation of corn in North America, correct?
exactly,
Right.
exactly, and that's what we're really talking about more than anything else. All right, how
Hmm.
all this took place. Now, there is a large faction, I'd say at least, of some academics. They may have all been died out by now, but I doubt it. But there's been a large faction of academics who have argued there was no connection between Mesoamerica with the Maya and the American, North American, Native American Indians that you see um, of the Southeast ceremonial culture, all right, or what they call the buzzer cult or death cult, the Southern death cult, or what we call Mississippian culture. I find that to be ridiculous. All right, it's obviously they're connected between the two. Okay, how they're connected and what level and to what extreme level they're connected, that's a question into itself. All right, I take a little more extreme version. I think that not only were they connected, I think there was it wasn't just passing information. There was people moving in direction as well too. I think that you look at some of the tribal groups that existed. If you look up any of I mean, there's one specific one. Let me look this up real quick. There's one in the South, and I'm trying to think of the name of the group right now. But there is there's a specific tribe that was down there that they noticed they found different loan words
Mm.
from in their language that they found and connected to Mississippian, excuse me, they found to Mayan language groups as well, the Choli languages. So it's becoming pretty obvious that, at least to me, that there is a connection between these two groups. If that makes any sense.
Hmm. So, the language connection. Somebody
Natchez,
asked
that's what
this.
I was trying to think of. I'm
Oh, the
sorry.
Natchez. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The Natchez was one. You can make some arguments, perhaps, about the Cadoans. You
Out
could
here in
all.
East
There's also
Texas.
one out of. Um, there's another group that's out of Louisiana, and there's a paper I found on that subject as well, where there's another author talking about this specifically, and he found direct language connections between Native Americans from down in Mesoamerica and the Louisianan tribes that existed in different specific language. There's crossovers there as well. So, to me, anyway, whether we're talking about whether it was just culture coming up, whether we're talking about it was people, there was some exchange going on that was pretty extensive. All right, and if
How?
you look specifically, what I'm looking at though is like three things. One, there's mounds that run all the way down into Mexico. Mound structures. We find them going all the way down to Mexico.
Now, when
Okay.
you say all the way down to Mexico, you mean like by like from Texas into Mexico into Mayan territory in the Yucatan?
Yes.
Like, wow, I didn't
Yes.
know that.
There's
Okay.
mounds that lead all the way down there. That's the first thing. Secondly, the calendrical systems. The calendrical systems that are being used in amongst Mississippian cultures, specifically dealing with the green corn ceremony and dealing with how they plant corn, whatever else, right? They're extremely reminiscent of the exact same types of ceremonies you see amongst Mesoamericans as well.
And
Okay.
these ceremonies are based on the equinoxes, right?
Yes, they are.
Right.
Yes, they are. So they're calendrical based. Okay, that's the other issue as well. And third, it's planning of their cities. All right, if you not to mention the top down aspects of how their cultures are set up between the highest most individuals on the highest of their echelons of their culture, all the way down to what they refer to as the stink tards at the very bottom. these groups are how they set themselves up and how they set up their cities, the social stratifications, whatever else, was rather reminiscent, extremely reminiscent of the same things we see in Mesoamerica too. Okay,
And human sacrifices as well.
human
There's evidence
sacrifices,
of
absolutely.
those. Yeah.
Yes, that's another
Yeah.
issue as well. I mean, at Mound 72 at Cahokia, they found well over 100 bodies that had been sacrificed along with within inside that mound. All right, I'm not ready to get into all that right now because I don't have that information in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, that is another example of what we're talking about too.
Yeah,
So we
it's more
see
evidence of the exchange of culture going on, because you don't see that type of ritualized human sacrifice in Eastern Algonquins
no,
or in Plains Native Americans or in the Pacific Northwest,
exactly.
as far as I know. Yeah,
So I mean that's where
or
I'm
in
kind
the
of going.
Incas. You see it in the Mayans and the Aztecs.
Yes,
Yeah.
you see that's where I'm going with all this. Right, to me, it becomes incredibly obvious that what you have going on here is a system that is designed around a the corn specifically, all right, social stratification to an extreme away. Um, the mound system, all right, which is part of social stratification, but it also boils down to the use of how to use calendars. I'll talk about that in a second, all right. And the symbolism, which is reminiscent of the same types of symbols, the same types of belief systems that you see down in Mesoamerica. So to me, the argument can't be any more clear that
Hmm.
there is a connection between these two groups.
And is mainstream archaeology resistant to this idea?
They have been quite a bit in the past. All right, when I first started into this research, well, actually, when I first started in archaeology overall, the the thing at the time was talking about the Holy Grail was trying to find the connection between Mesoamerica and North American Native Americans. Right, it trying to find, because so many people have argued that it doesn't exist. All right.
Hmm.
Um, so for me anyway, I thought that this was probably a really interesting thing to look into, but at the same time, I never really found any kind of like way
Smoking
into
gun.
the argument to discuss it for the most part until I ran into the rattlesnake disc, and that
Mm.
for me is something that led me into this type of work and research, right, and trying to find these connections. Not to mention the fact it's something that I personally um, I love working with symbols. I love working with these ideas, and it's. But before I go any further, I want to say this. Okay, um, I don't have any real axe to grind with all of academia. I really don't. All right, I don't. There's a few that have nothing to do with my university or whatever else, but there's a few that I think are kind of stuck in the mud about their how they see things. These are the same type of people that probably were going to be um, Clovis first type individuals,
Yeah.
leading until the day they died. To ride with this kind of concept. But this gives you an example, in my personal opinion, how modern academia is very slow to make changes about certain things, and I think to some extent this leads to people thinking that in some kind of grand conspiracy amongst the vast majority of academics that we're all trying to cover some shit up. Okay. If there are people trying to cover something up, I'd say they're few and far between. There might be a smaller group out there that might be doing that. Okay. That's possible. All right. But I think for the vast majority of academics out there, they're just very slow to actually come to change their positions. And there's a reason for this, because 9 times out of 10, they've done all this work and they did all this research and it took them years to do it. And then they put it out, and then here comes along someone else and knocking their sandcastle down, and they get very upset about it, and it becomes a personal issue. And that's my
Yeah.
personal opinion about it. Okay, that's really what's my personal opinion of what's going on.
Yeah.
So you lose the aspect of the meritocracy in many ways. You lose that aspect of it in academia, and it all becomes personal, emotional arguments back and forth about certain things where they know full well the position doesn't stand,
Yeah.
but at the same time they want to hold on to it very dearly because there's so much of their lives is based on it. If that makes
Right.
any sense.
it's tied in, like their research is and believing that that's true is tied in with what could be called a sunk cost if it's not true,
Yeah.
and it would discredit them. And there's many examples of this. I've talked about it before. This comment. So midden heaps would be interesting. So I mean, we probably have some right, but the issue. Oh, a midden heap is like a trash heap. It has a lot of implications for archaeology, because when you find a midden heap, based on what's inside it, you can tell what they were eating, what they were doing, things like that, based on what they threw away into these heaps. But unfortunately, a lot of these mounds, because they were just mounds of dirt, in the creation of St. Louis, as well as a bunch of other situations, a lot of these mounds were just plowed over, and whatever was inside them is lost forever, if anything, and
Yeah,
just their
that's
existence
the
themselves.
trash heaps are what we do in archaeology. Trash heaps is what we do. Okay, let's be honest about it. We're in trash.
Yeah,
We sift through people's trashes from thousands of years ago to find out what they did. All right, what we're really trying to do is focus on human behavior. All right, we're trying to understand human behavior. Now, there's a great majority of archaeologists out there who disagree with that statement. Okay, there's a great majority of them out there I would argue that are believe that what we're really doing is trying to change the world or save the world or whatever else, right? We're attempting to find out things about the past in order for the purpose of trying to change some political viewpoint or whatever else about how the world's supposed to work, right? They take a very Marxist approach, in my personal opinion, about how they see academia, and they are causing a lot of problems, in my personal opinion. All right.
yeah. Flint Dibble can go fuck himself.
I,
I
you
can
know,
say it. You can't. It's me.
I'm
It's
not
me.
going to say anything negative about him other than to say that he is definitely a representation, in my personal opinion, of some of the attitudes you get across in academia. All right, and I think that there is a middle ground between the journalist that you see with Graham Hancock, the journalist who's out there trying to ask questions, figure things out, and Flint Dribble, who is doing his. There's a middle ground between these two groups. My personal
Did
opinion.
you meant to say Flint Dribble, right?
Yeah, Flint Dribble. Yeah.
I cannot believe that I haven't thought of Flint Dribble before. It's right in front of my face. Yeah, and thank you for actually calling Graham Hancock a journalist. In no
He
way
is a
is Graham
journalist.
Hancock an archeologist, so he can't be a pseudo archaeologist.
He's a
Yeah,
journalist. I think he
yeah,
makes the mistake though of spewing spewing things he probably shouldn't say without backing them up. But at the same time, he is 100% a journalist, and I don't have a problem with that if that's what he's doing is asking questions. I don't have an issue with him specifically,
hmm
and I think we have to take that into consideration. But Flint is he has a tendency occasionally, from what I've seen, to say things pretty wildly off the cuff too. All right,
yeah. He makes a
and
lot of
that
mistakes, and it's less excusable if you're an actual archaeologist. Like
yeah, exactly. And if you're
it's
an actual archaeologist, you have to be able to back up what you say.
right.
You 100% have, and I will, or at least do what I do and say, I don't know for certain if X is true. All right. But
Mhm.
this is what I think the evidence is leading me towards. All right. Or I
Right.
suspect things are true. I was a cop for 20 years. I have no problem saying I suspect certain things to be true or not true. I have no problem with that concept. All right. If I can't prove it, or excuse me, if I can't like bring support to it, all right, I'll tell you I can't. This is just what I think is going. This is what I think is they're good for. If that makes any sense. All right.
Right. Right.
I'll
A lot of
definitely.
times the arguments are based on like appeals to authority. Unfortunately, it's like, oh, I'm the archaeologist, so I know what's true. So my interpretation is presented as fact. And that
I,
I see that quite often.
every semester I get up and teach. The first words out of my mouth is, "I'm that bum they found on the street to come in here and teach this class for you." Okay. I'm truly of the type of belief that if you can't put your ego aside to some extent, all right, to do this job, all right, then you probably shouldn't be doing the job, all right, because we have one too many individuals out there who've built their entire. Well, the difference between me and other people more than likely is I had a career as a cop for a long time and in the military, the whole 9 yards, before I went into academia. So therefore, that's probably the difference between me and other ones, right? And I'm not saying anything negative about other people like that, but a wiser man than me one time said that if you separate your academics from your warriors, all right, you're going to have really bad versions of both, in my personal opinion. And I think that's true too. Now that's me getting off topic, and I'm sorry about that. But at
No,
the same
that's fine.
time,
Yeah.
I think that there's a bad habit of a lot of academics who went to academia, who went into the college university system, and never left. If that makes sense.
Yeah, a lot of them, it's funny because I think we were both Marines, both of us.
Yes.
So the one issue I often compare the military leadership to academia, because what you have in the military is you have enlisted men who joined at 18, and then by the time they're 35 years old, they're a gunny, they're an E7, and they've never lived outside of either school or the military. They don't know anything else.
Yep.
And you have a similar thing with academics in that they often are not they don't have any life outside of school, so they're perpetual children in the sense that when they were 18 they went to get their undergrad and then they got their master's and their PhD and they don't know anything else, so their entire worldview is formed around this one place. And I think that regardless of what that one experience is, it's not varied, and it doesn't make you into a very well-rounded person. It makes you into somebody that just fully understands, or not fully understands because you can't fully understand it without comparing it to anything else, but is just completely engrossed in that one thing. And that's why you get childish people throughout academia. And for my own, you don't have to, I can say all the most offensive stuff. Flint Dibble, pseudo-archaeologist, is he's a petulant little child who only is in his position because the people with the money want him there, and he provides very little of value and actually does harm, and he shows his jealousy and his poor character through his actions and how he treats other people often.
I was very lucky. I was extremely lucky. I got to work with a pair of husband and wife academics, archaeologists who are very level headed, extremely good people, and they run the archaeology for the most part, I guess you could say, for University of Missouri, and that is Todd and Christine Van Poel. They are extremely, extremely good people, and they gave me an excellent example of what an academic should act like, and that is something that I definitely appreciate from the both of them. All right.
Yeah.
As far as the rest of the individuals I've met in my life, as far as archaeologists and anthropologists as a whole, it's a mixed bag. And the truth of the matter is, there's a lot of them out there that I've met that I'm not so sure that they're in it for any other reason but for their own clout chasing, in my personal opinion. All right, but that's just me.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's also archaeology and anthropology in general is one of the most left-wing dominated fields, unfortunately.
Yes,
and that you can see that a lot. What I often find, and after this, let's get into more of this Mayan stuff, but
mm-hmm.
what I often find is that it essentially they're not used to it. It's not like a conspiracy cabal type thing at a greater level. There might be an element of that, but I think most of what it is that there's just natural consensus on a lot of things that there shouldn't be, which makes them in a position that they're not used to defending their beliefs in a certain way because they're not hearing counter arguments, because there aren't people to provide those counter arguments because they're forced out.
No, I agree with that too, definitely.
Yeah.
But I think that it's maybe not as bad as that. I do think there's definitely people willing to like question them and kick down their sandcastles any chance they get. The issue boils down to they're only doing it in a limited way towards a certain types of theory. Okay, like I'll give you an example. If I was going to sit down with Graham Hancock and have a discussion with him, the first thing I would say to him is that theoretically speaking, you can't have this diffusion idea of a grandiose worldwide diffusion concept where everyone is originating from a single solitary source, right? Without someone calling you on it. Okay,
Oh yeah, of course. I mean,
that's
I don't even agree. I don't agree with most of Graham Hancock's
I,
theories. He
I know
brings
you
up
don't.
specific stuff, but yeah,
He's a great guy. Don't get me wrong. He's probably one of the
hmm
reasons I got into archaeology too, because of his books and
yeah,
people like him in the past. Right, I had a grandfather who was really into this kind of stuff, and he was really into like the Charles Fort, um, Low the Damned kind of stuff, right? That kind of thing.
I don't know what that is, but
That goes way back there, all
oh,
right.
okay,
But when we're talking about this kind of thing, I mean, the pseudo archaeology theories, right, is stuff that, especially from a religious standpoint of view, because I'm a Christian, I think that these are ideas and concepts that I was really incredibly interested in, especially biblical versions. And people like Graham Hancock, who were saying the things he was saying, that had nothing to do with religion per se, but had to do with, you can't just take everything, you can't take everything archaeologists say with a grain of salt. And he was giving the alternative ideas, and some of the things that led me also into this kind of stuff too. I don't agree with everything the man has to say, but I definitely think he has a right to say it. All right, and I think that that's, if I was going to argue with that, I would, again, for the example I was giving, if I was going to argue with him, I would say, hey, look, you can't use this hyper diffusionary argument and apply to everything with Lantis, right? And you can't really do that. And I think that I would make some similar arguments to other academics about their theoretical basis as well, and say you can't make an argument everything out of like functionalism or an evolutionary theory applied to everything. We have a toolbox
right,
full
right,
of theory, okay, and we
right.
have to open it up and pull stuff out and use it for what we're doing, all right?
Yes, I
And I
fully
think
agree with you. Yeah.
that's where I'm going with that.
And what I often do is a synthesis of all. And look, I'm not like married to any single idea. I see this with Graham Hancock because he's very concentrated on this one, which is fine. Like people, you need people concentrated on one way of viewing the world, and then if you're somebody who can compile and synthesize those different theories into like what is the more complete truth, based on like a bunch of different smart theories from different places, then you can find out more. But like I see this with Graham Hancock's theories. I also see it with Marxist, explicitly Marxist
Yes.
people, is that they will view everything through the lens of Marxism, and they ignore, well, they don't ignore materialism because that's part of it, but they ignore any other style of theory. But for me, like I'll listen to what the Black Hebrew Israelites have to say. I'll listen to whoever anybody has to say, like geographical determinism, all these different theories, and then you bring them together, and you should be able to know what's true, what's not, what makes sense, what biases are being involved. But that being said, let's get into the Mayan stuff. So what do you want
Can I say
to?
one last thing real quick? You know how
Yeah.
to beat Marxism in like 5 seconds?
Mm.
Call it conspiracy theory.
Oh.
Because when you think about Marxism and what it is, ultimately, when you talk about the bourgeoisie versus the proletariat, what they're really saying is there's a big bad guy somewhere high up on the chain who's in control of all the events, and that's the person who we got to take down. That's ultimately their argument, over and over and over and over again. All right, that in a nutshell, that's what they're always assuming, for whatever reason, there's some white guy that exists out there somewhere who's behind a green curtain, some Wizard of Oz, who's running the show, and that's ultimately that's literally when you start tearing it down, that's what it is. And you can beat it that way and there you are. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
put off the side, John. Again, I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, that's all right. All right. Where do you want to start here?
Well, we can start with the disc itself, the first picture, if you like.
Yeah. So we got
Okay,
this disc.
this is the rattlesnake disc. This is a sandstone disc that's roughly about inch thick, about a foot wide, and it has the symbols that you see on front of it, which are two snakes that are tied together, moving in a counterclockwise direction, and a severed hand in the center with an eye in the center of that. All right.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I want to point out to you is that the snakes have tongues that are sticking out and are going out directly to the tails. You have corn kernels that exist on the outside of the tails. You have eye surrounds on the eyes, which usually in amongst Mississippian culture denote deities. And we know they're rattlesnakes not just because the corn kernels on the tails, but also the horns. A lot of rattlesnakes have horns as well. Both the rattlesnakes, a lot of people miss this too, is the rattlesnakes are actually marked different. One's got a stair step type marking, and the other one has more chevron type marking. And the hand and the eye symbol that you see in front of you there is actually kind of weird too, because if you notice, you have the bottom of the wrist, the line on the bottom of the wrist, but the fingernails appear to be on the hand up front too as well, which is kind of weird if you think about it. It's an interesting how they created the symbol. It's very specific how they did it. There's 17 bifurcations that go on the outside markings, notches, and we'll get into that too as well.
Yeah.
If you want to skip down to one after that one. Oh no, one more down, one more down.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay. This just gives you some brief aspects of what we see. What becomes apparent, at least to me, when I look at this, is that there was, for all the aspects here that are so specific, right, how they did it, how it's carved. Um, for some reason or other, the entire set of symbols is moved to the right about 9 degrees for whatever reason. The eye in the center is not actually the center of the disc, strangely enough. It's close to the exact center, but it's not the exact center of the disc, which I thought was really weird. When I started like looking into why that was, what I found out is if you draw a line from the exact center of the disc to the eye on the the right side snake and run that straight out, you get a perfect 60-degree angle. If
Oh,
that is
can you
true,
say that again?
if you run a line from the dead center of that disc, all right, where that black dot is, and run
Yeah.
it over to the eye of on the right hand side snake,
Oh, okay.
okay, you get a perfect 60-degree angle. All right.
Okay.
And I thought that was a little weird because that's the azimuth that you see of the where the sun rises in northern hemisphere, which was actually the North American continent above Mexico, from above the Tropic of Cancer. Um, that's where you see the sun in the rising in the east on the summer solstice at that azimuth, 6 degree azimuth. Now I thought that was a little weird. There's other aspects here as well that are kind of different. The positions of the tongues, the position of the corn kernels. Immediately when I saw this, I started going, okay, this is horned serpent. This is rattlesnakes. This is horned serpent, and it's obviously connected with the corn kernels. It's connected to rattlesnakes like what you saw out of Mexico, Quetzalcoatl. So for me, this became a pretty obvious thing. Going, okay, what I'm looking at here is more than likely a representation of the corn god, and of course, Quetzalcoatl had a twin brother called Exquatl. So you have twin snakes here. So maybe perhaps that's a representation of what we're looking at. Okay, that was my first initial thoughts when I started doing a study of it. And other things that I found out, I'll go on as we I'll continue as we go. The next slide. These are motifs. Mississippi culture overall had these symbolic motifs from as far north as what you see in Ohio, all the way down to Louisiana, all across the entire Mississippian culture. Some of these motifs, like the first one there, is the petuloid or flower motif. That is really interesting because that's the same. We look at Mesoamerica; they believe in the flowery war, that whole concept, right? So the flower motif is an interesting one as well. Number two, you have the swastika or the spinning dial. All right,
Hmm.
that probably is a representation of the movement of time,
Right.
and that's another
Yeah.
idea that you see in Mesoamerica too. Well, yes.
Yeah.
You have the number three. You have the eye surrounds across the eye. That usually is representation of falcons or flying birds. Um, Again, we're talking about a representation of godhood. Number four, you have the OG mouth, which is probably a symbol that represents going into the spirit world. Uh, I'm not the first person to say this. These are ideas that come from other scholars. But yeah, the door to the spirit world, the OG mouth, all right, which might be the representation of what you see in the hand of the eye. If you go back to the other slide, the
Oops.
one above it, yeah. In number five, you have the three stripe pillar. That pillar that sits in the center, it also probably represents Axis Mundi, or
Hmm.
the position where a lot of the when you get into shamanistic views of cosmos, or right, their ideas of how they see the universe, right? You have a flat plane, and you have a tree sitting in the center, all right, or a pole sitting in the center, and that's the axis mundi that is the center of the world, all right, and everything spins around it. And for a lot of Native Americans, the three stripe pole represents the axis mundi. And of course, number six, which is the hand in the eye symbol, which is representation of what you see in the OG mouth. And then finally, number seven, you have flying in space. Same thing we saw a second ago with what we've had with the rattlesnakes on the disc. You have these thunderbirds with rattles that look like corn kernels on their tails, right, spinning in space, right, around a central point. All right, probably as I will talk about later, the North Pole. You
And
want
these
to move on?
tails here, corn kernels,
Yeah,
they look like, or corn cobs rather.
corn cobs. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you go to the
Next.
next one,
Yeah.
Path of Souls. I think that what we're really looking at is, as far as that swastika symbol, what we're looking at is the Big Dipper. The Big Dipper, as if you've ever looked up the night sky towards the north and just paid attention, the Big Dipper spins around a centralized point. All right, in the night sky of the North Pole. All right, and as it moves in a counterclockwise fashion, the exact same way that you see the symbols on the disc doing. All right, I would argue that the center of the disc is more than likely the North Pole, the center of the hand of the eye. Okay, that's what
Hmm.
you're looking at in that symbol. A little part about Mississippian culture, they believed that the path of souls was the Milky Way. How you get to the spirit world is you had to walk the path of souls. You had to walk the Milky Way in the night sky, which will eventually lead you to the doorway, which is at the very center of the world. Next slide. I'm just using this as the world tree X money to explain some how these symbols are very similar to what you see in European ones as well, because the when you talk about the aspect of spiritualism, we're talking about the aspect of how shamanism manifests itself, right, in their cosmology. You see the Maya, the Norse, and also now the Mesoamerican, excuse me, the Mississippi one, all have similar themes. You have that same concept of the striped pole, center of the universe. You have the snakes. You have all those things, all the aspects that are very similar between the. You see these motifs over and over and over again. And now you can make the argument, well, they're connected. They must have had some direct connection with each other. And that may be true, of course, between the Maya and may be true between the Maya and the Mississippi culture. But we also see this type of thing going on in European ones as well. All right, so that should give you an idea if you have a shamanistic system and they have a belief system like I'm describing here, they will more than likely have that flat plane, the X money in the center, snakes, thunder, gods, the whole nine yards. And it's rather reminiscent of each other, if that makes any sense. I
Yeah.
know that a lot of people would make the argument that they had to have some direct connection here between groups, and that could be possible. But what we've seen over and over and over again across the entire world, you have a shamanistic, animistic system, right? They had a tendency to have an axis money in that flat plane spinning around, if that makes any
Yeah.
sense. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
Somebody
sure you've
brought
got
this up.
before in your own background.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen a bunch of these. Do Australian Aborigines have a similar motif? I don't even know if you know that, but they don't have a lot. of material culture left behind, unlike other places. But the swastika itself is pretty much everywhere in different forms.
Yeah, I would make the argument in this particular case is they're representing that Big Dipper going around the center point. Um, I would also point out that a lot of the cultures call that the big wheel in European cultures. They're also referred to as the big wheel of time, right? And they also talk about that swastika or that Big Dipper going around the center like that as a representation of the type of thing we're talking about. If that makes any sense.
Yeah,
Um, Down at the bottom there, you have the exact same symbols of what you see on the disc itself on a whelk shell that was inscribed on it. It's been blown up and laid out for you to see it. It's the exact same symbols, all right, with just the twins that you see out of Mesoamerican culture, the same hero twins, the Popovú there, moving in separate directions, all right, uh, tied together the exact same way, all right, and to me that almost cinches up the aspect. We're talking about hero twins. We're talking about what you see on the disc itself. If that makes any sense too.
yeah, yeah.
All right.
Uh, Next
The,
one.
yeah, the door of the spirit world. At the top, in that original picture you saw, the two twins splitting apart, there was a raccoon there. You also have a raccoon on a lot of the symbols we see here as well. Raccoons have human-looking hands. All right, I don't know if you knew this
Sure
or not.
do.
They have
Yeah,
human-looking hands,
you should
and
see him grab something and run away. It's hilarious.
yeah, in the center of their hands, there's a raised area that may have been what you're seeing on the disc there. The why the fingers look like claws. That may be what you're looking at. I'm not sure if that's true or not, but I would make the argument that for at least the Mississippian culture, or at least for some of these tribes, if you're looking for a tutelary animal, if you're looking for a trickster spirit who sits at the door of the spirit world, the top of the access money at the top of the tree, it's going to be the raccoon. Okay, that's what I think is going on.
And you
Right.
only see this in North America. Of course,
No,
I
you
mean,
see tutelary spirits, you see trickster spirits like this, seeing guarding the doorway to the spirit world, and a lot of other Loki, for example. All right,
right. But they're
but
all
yeah,
representations of whatever, like some specific animal or other symbol that comes from their specific area. So in North America, it's a raccoon.
I would say for Mississippian culture,
Okay.
some of those tribes of Mississippian culture, it was a raccoon. Some of it
Hmm.
also may have been rabbits. It may have been some other aspect of trickster spirit, coyote, whatever else. Um, the fact that they're putting him at the top of the pole, I find really interesting because also when you start getting into the Native American ball games, like the ones where they use for the stick, or they're throwing the ball around each other,
Lacrosse. Yeah.
lacrosse.
I'm from the Northeast, so I played lacrosse.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
original lacrosse was done with a stick that had a raccoon pelt. That
Really?
was,
Oh, I
yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah. So again, I think that's probably representative of what we're talking about too. All right, it's part of their. That's part of what you're saying. If you can move on to the next one.
Okay. Well, Yehuda says you got a citation.
Uh,
There's a lot of writers on this stuff that watch my show,
that's cool.
my
I like
channel
reading
rather.
that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Well,
I
this
just
is.
had a
Go ahead.
guy, a philologist last week who came on to talk about historical linguistics. We didn't talk about raccoons. We talked about like cultural exchange. If you're watching this and you want to check that out, it's an episode, a couple on the Illegitimate Scholar podcast where we talked about that. That just came out. A really nice episode. And the week before that was astrology. And so some of that is I already told the woman that I recorded with, Class Delusions, about this, and she's interested in what you have to say about the calendrical system. Not that we got too much into it, but yeah.
The symbol you're seeing there is what I'm using as a representation of what it looks like their cosmology, with the world tree, the trickster spirit, path of souls leading to the hand at the top with the eye in the center. That
Yeah.
original picture came from this book here. I want to cite it real quick to make sure people know I'm not trying to like steal anything from anybody. It
Yeah.
came from Hero Hawk and Open Hand. The original picture came from this book. Okay, and
Yeah.
um, it was done by Townsend. He was the main editor of the book, right?
Oh,
And
I
the
know
person who,
Townsend, don't I?
yeah,
Some.
he's the one who originally did it. And oh, here it is, right here. This is the original picture it was done, right? And it was done by.
Wait, pull that
Uh,
back up so I can. Can you show that picture again? Oh, it's the same one, right? Yeah, yeah.
I just separate. I just made it smaller
Got it.
and
Okay.
took some of the parts out to like emphasize what I was trying to point out. Yeah, Path of Souls, Leading of the Hand, Trick Spear at the top of the tree, World Tree points north. That's what I am trying to relate as far as how this goes, how it
And you
works.
got the raccoon there.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, to make it kind of give people a visual representation of the cosmology you're looking at. All right, if you could go to the skin. Okay, that is a Skittipani buckskin star map. For
Okay.
anybody who'd argue that the Native
Hmm.
Americans were not actually doing this kind of work, you're wrong. Okay,
Yeah.
they were absolutely charting stars.
I think
Okay,
one of the problems is that a lot of the materials they used are not as resilient and would have been destroyed either intentionally or lost to time. Things like buckskin don't last in the archaeological record as well as like a stone pyramid,
exactly.
or even a mound doesn't last as well as a stone pyramid.
Well, that's part of the yeah, that's definitely part of the problem. But I also had to make the argument that you're looking at a group of people who were able to figure out when the summer solstice was every year, so they can
Mhm.
get two crops of corn. All right, and
Right? Yeah.
yeah, I mean the green corn ceremony is really about that. So I mean, to me, they had a good enough calendar to be able to figure these things out for a group of people that didn't have written language and supposedly didn't have a numbering system, all that kind of stuff with it. That's ridiculous. Of course they did.
Yeah.
The next one after that is this is the Bighorn Medicine Wheel in Wyoming. Now, this is not a part of Mississippian culture as per se, but this gives another example of Native Americans doing things very similar to what you see in Europe at Stonehenge, for example, where they're laying out stones for calendrical purposes. They're building calendars out of these things. These
Yeah.
that's a medicine wheel, which is a group of stones laid out in lines, a central point, and those stones are lined up in a certain axis to be able to figure out what north is, to figure out the summer
Yeah.
solstice, and all the stuff along with it.
And this is the medicine wheel type of thing. I'm actually making one of these in my garden, in my backyard right now. And that's what this symbol reminds me of at the bottom of this tree here. Like
Mm-hmm.
it obviously is reminiscent of the other swastikas, but it looks to be very much, since it's straight lines in the center, more reminiscent of the medicine wheel,
Yeah,
more
they're
directly.
definitely absolutely knowing where north, south, east, west is. Right, they're 100% charting those types of things. They're also charting like specific stars. They're charting specific locations in the night sky. They're charting things like when the solstices are, when the equinoxes are. They're charting when the Venus is moving around. They're charting all these things, right? They're putting them down and line these things out in their medicine wheels. But they're not just using medicine wheels, all right? They're also using other things as well, all right? And I'm going to get to how they're doing that in just 1 second. If you go to the next slide, please. Okay, this is a star chart literally pulled off of, I can't remember the site off the top of my head, but this is actually one of this is the northern constellations. If you look directly at the North Star, this is what you'd be looking at, all right? And you have in front of you, you have the Big Dipper, and you have all the constellations in front of you. And I'm sorry if I'm blinking; I can't see very well. Cassiopeia, Capella, and Vega, and of course the Little Dipper in the center. This is what you would be looking at the night sky as it spins counterclockwise on a nightly basis. All right. I want you to pay attention to where Vega and Capella, the two big blue big blue stars on the left and right hand side of the screen.
Right. Vega.
Okay,
Oops. Vega's on the right, and then Cahokia or Capella is on the
Capella's on the
left.
left. All right.
Yeah.
Pay attention to those. All right. Now, when we move on to the next slide, notice that Vega, if you spun everything into counterclockwise one quarter turn, yeah,
Yeah. It's left and right.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, I'm
Where the
sorry. Well,
positions of the
Vega's up
tongues
here.
are is the positions of where Vega and Capella would be at. Okay, and then you have
Yeah.
yeah, all right, and then you have the Big Dipper and Cassiopeia and everything else. Yeah, that's what's going on here. Okay, that's what they're charting. Okay,
Yeah.
if you skip the next one, you also have these counterclockwise movements, right, where you have the both of the chevron snakes and the stair step snakes are tied together, moving the direction they're spinning. If you count all the symbols or the markings on each snakes, they add up to 18. All right, there's a reason for that because if you look at the Mayan calendar and how many months is in the Mayan calendar, there's 18 months in the Mayan calendar plus 5 days. And the hand in the center is five fingers for 5 days. You have 18 marks across all the snakes. You have corn kernels on the snakes themselves. What you're looking at here is a calendar system. All right, that's supposed to. It's kind of like I was not raised Catholic, but there's a particular calendrical system they use in the Catholic Church for the time frame around Christmas, where an Advent calendar. Okay,
Hmm.
this is kind of like an Advent calendar in many ways, right? They're trying to mark exactly when the summer solstice actually is. Okay, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Now, one of the interesting things that's really important here to take into consideration is if we skip a couple more down. I don't want to spend too much time doing this, but go one more down. Okay, that's where that mark I told you before about where the dead center of the disc. If this is pointed through the finger straight up to mark it due north and run the dead center of the disc through the eye, that comes up perfectly 60 degrees.
So
If you
this
have
area
that
right here is 60 degrees.
exactly, it's 60 degrees perfectly.
From
All
dead
right.
center from the middle finger versus the eye, it's 60
Yeah,
degrees. Okay.
exactly. Right. Dead center of the disc running just through the finger, middle finger, straight up to that eye, through the eye, is 60 degrees. Now, why is that important? Well, because that's where the sun rises at that 6-degree angle for the summer solstice every year, all right, at that azimuth, all right, as it comes over the horizon. All right. They can mark it exactly that way. Now they weren't just using the disc, by the way, to do this with, all right? And I'm going to show you in the next slide how they're actually probably doing it.
This
This is
one?
the Black Warrior River. This is Moundville, Alabama, and you
Yeah.
see the various different mounds that exist on this. There's quite a few, and you can see how they're. You have four in a line on the left hand side, and you have two or three of them on the right hand side. If you could go down to the next slide, please. You have
Oh,
exactly 60-degree angles between these mounds, right? That are marked off. You can see it.
what's
So
the marking on these mounds that are larger that connotates that that's the spot for
the
60
spot is the
degrees?
highest point.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right. And then the top of everything else, I mean, I went out there to check it out myself, all right? And of course, what was the highest point at that time frame may not necessarily have been the highest point now. And I'm perfectly willing to say that that may be true. I may be incorrect on that point. But at the same time, to me at least, it looks like they were standing on one mound to look over the taller other mound, all right, and say, okay, the
Oh,
sun's coming over this mound, so I know exactly this point. I know this is the time frame of the summer solstice, and
wow.
they
Okay.
encoded that information into the planning of their entire city. If that makes any sense.
This Moundville here, this was a city.
Yes, that was a whole
Okay.
city just like Cahokia.
Right. Okay. And this
Not as
inner
big as
area,
obviously, but the same
yeah.
size. Not as
Sweet.
big.
This is a
And
green
of course,
corn
this talks
ceremony.
about the green corn or bust ceremony, which is still goes on to this very day. That they still celebrate. The Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, all of them still celebrate this day. Cherokee don't celebrate it on the solstice like the rest of them may do, but at the same time, they have connections to that particular day because the same month in their language for the bus ceremony is actually named after the recourse ceremony. So, I mean, to me, it sounds like maybe perhaps they have some transfers or changing over the years of when they actually did the ceremonies. But for the Choctaw, Chickasaw, and other groups, they are directly connected to the solstice for when they do the ceremonies.
And the Choctaw and the Chickasaw are at least in the area of the Mississippian cultures, right?
Oh yeah, they're part of the
And the
Mississippi
Cherokee as
culture.
well.
Yeah.
Well,
So I mean,
wait, the Cherokee are Iroquoian, right? They're a little bit different.
they're a little bit different, but they came in probably during the time frame when they came in during the time frame of when Cahokia was at its height. So they
Okay.
probably borrowed a lot of information, and if you start, especially if you get into their myths and beliefs, you definitely see it. Where
Okay.
the myths of the Cherokee and the Choctaw and the Chickasaw have similarities, but yeah, you definitely see where their belief systems start coinciding with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, all right.
Oh,
Then
Brent
of
Taylor.
course,
Yeah. Choctaw Bingo is a freaking amazing song. That is the. I don't know if you know that song, Cam.
I don't know
Sorry.
that's
Oh, it's like a 9 minute like American ballad. It's amazing. About it's like about Oklahoma and East Texas. It's the best. Yeah. Anybody who hasn't heard Choctaw Bingo, look that up. I'm gonna throw that in the Discord.
I'll definitely check that out. All right,
It's
we
a
have
it's a killer song.
just this just puts icing on the cake is all this really is.
Hmm.
This is the that symbol on the left is came from a Aztec brazier. It shows the corn kernels specifically, all right, and then you have the same corn kernels on the snake on the right. Um, so I mean, to me, that just adds exactly what I'm saying. Of course, you have the same corn kernels on the disc itself. That in my
And this snake, this image is from Mayan culture, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
So it's comparing this Mayan image, and if you look at the tail here, you can see very clearly that this is very similar in the end to
yeah,
how the end of the rattlesnake tail looks
yeah. That's how
on
they
this.
direct.
And this is from the Mississippi. This is
Yes,
from Mississippi. This is found in Alabama, right?
yes.
When I say
Mount
Mississippi
Alabama.
River,
That's the same. That's the same area I
yeah.
just showed you where it was found at. Matter of fact, let me go back a little bit. The original story, as I understand it, was that they found it in a field. They found it in a farmer hit it with his plow, all right, and it sat on his mantle. The disc sat on his mantle for like a number of years until an archaeologist came around and took a look at it, and they thought they had a piece of Aztec or Mayan. Well, specifically, thought it was a piece of Aztec culture that had wandered its way up into Alabama, and the Clarence Moore was the archaeologist, and this was the late 1900s, sorry, early 1900s when he saw it. He took one look at it, checked the size and everything else, and looking at it and going, "Nah, this can't be Aztec. It's impossible. The symbols don't match up. Whatever else, it's not. It's just probably just a paint palette of some type or other." Right? That was his view at the
He
time.
was the Flint
And
Dibble of his time. No
yes,
imagination.
yeah. And then it went for a whole century until me and a few other people started looking at it and going, maybe there might be something to this, right?
Hmm.
Next slide. These are Aztec calendar stones.
Wait, these are all Aztec. These look
Yeah.
Mayan,
Well, the ones at the bottom, the one on the bottom is definitely
right?
Aztec.
This one's Aztec, but
Some of them,
these look Mayan at the top.
I don't want to argue the
It's
point with you,
okay.
but
We don't
yeah,
need to. Yeah.
it's fine. But I know that the two at the bottom are definitely Aztec. All right,
Right.
three
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
top could have came from Teotihuacan. All right, I'm not incredibly sure, but I think they may have came from Teotihuacan. The
Yeah.
problem with saying whether or not something's mine from Teotihuacan is the issue of that was a lot of different cultures existed in Teotihuacan.
Yeah.
Okay, and it
Absolutely.
could have been Mayan as per se, quote unquote, or it could not have been.
Teotihuacan was pre-Aztec anyway, right? Like it
Yes, it
existed
was. Right?
beforehand.
Well, the
Yeah,
Aztec came back and took the city over again when they came to power as well.
right.
But how much influence? I mean, obviously Teotihuacan had a lot of influence on the Maya. Actually, I had a lot of influence on the Aztec. But again, that's neither here nor there. You
Yeah.
could be absolutely right. I think those three discs came from Teotihuacan though, and
Yeah. Okay.
it could be mine.
The important ones are at the bottom, not the top. We don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't need to split hairs.
These are all
over-
calendar discs, and these are the type
Yeah.
of discs that I'm talking about. I think, in my personal opinion, represent what you're seeing here with the Alabaman rattlesnake disc. All right, same concept, same ideas, same views. All right,
Yeah.
that's what things going on. And the last symbol is just this disc with some of the paint that was found on the disc and what they think it probably looked like originally was painted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait. So, are these colors? Are these just what people chose, or is there remnants of the hues of this paint that you found in the lab?
I did not find these in the lab. These are just representations of, as I understand it, what the hues that were originally found on the disc when it was found way back when. All right.
Okay.
And
Is there any like traces of that? I know that you can if you look microscopically, you can find traces of the hues, or is it just an artistic representation?
No,
That's okay.
I'm not going to tell them I do. But
Good.
as I understand it, this is what, according to one of the tribal elders I talked to, who was from Chickasaw,
Mhm.
claimed this is what it would look like as well. I did not
Okay.
do this. All right?
Well, that's
But
something.
I'll go take his word for it.
Cool.
Okay.
Okay. Sweet.
And of course, everything after that is just slides from all my different resources and whatever else, all my different citations that
Yeah.
I can with it. Now, the reason I showed all this, all right, is I want to put the icing on the cake as to some research that I've been working on for like the last couple of years, and say what may tie all this directly to Mesoamerica. Okay, if you have the capability of allowing me to do the presentation real quick.
Yeah. If you have a tab up and you go to the bottom in StreamYard, you can click share or something like that, or
Yeah.
present, and
Present.
it'll let you pull it up, and then I can pull it up here.
Okay.
And we went into way more detail in the standalone video that I'm going to be uploading either later tonight or tomorrow. So look out for that. Subscribe if you're not, to see it. And we'll be revisiting more of this stuff later. Because obviously, if you listen to the channel, you know that I am very interested in the Mayans.
Okay. All right.
I would cut off my left nut to see this thing in its prime, how it actually looked.
All right.
Okay, so I'll add that to the stage. All right, you're in control now.
Around here real quick.
And this is the icing on the cake. This is the death blow to the naysayers.
Hang on. All right, let me get this over here. All right. Why is that still showing?
If you're on a different tab, you should be able to switch it. I don't know if you shared your screen or if you shared the tab.
Screen.
Yeah, well,
Let me
you
stop
should be
sharing.
able- yeah,
Hang on.
okay.
Share screen. There it is. There we go. Okay.
Oh yeah, this is
Yeah.
this is awesome.
Teotihuacan, all right, is a gigantic city, all right, that has this pyramid of the sun, the moon, and the pyramid of the snake or the serpent that is in just north of just northwest east of northeast of Mexico City. Okay. This is the. Why is it not showing this?
Is it pulling up in front of that? There's a few
Yeah.
different settings on how you can share either the entire screen or like a specific tab.
Okay, let me try it this way. It's not allowing me to show it. Or whatever it is, not let me show it. Hang on.
The first time I saw this, I was acting like a black guy reacting to magic. I don't know if you've seen those videos online if you're watching, but they're black people tend to love magic and freak out when they see it, which I love. Love black people.
Entire screen. There you go. Do it that way.
Okay.
All right. Okay. You see this works. All right. This is basically Teotihuacan, all right, as this is the city inside of Mexico. This was north of Mexico City. You have the Temple of Quetzalcoatl, or Temple of Serpent, Pyramid of the Sun, Pyramid of the Moon, and core columns. And it's argued that for one reason or another, they think this street that runs in the center of the complex, this street is running at magnetic north. It's not. I don't know why they claim this. It has no clue. It has nothing to do with it. Matter of fact, you can tell exactly how far off it's because they know where true north is. And I'm going to make the argument that that argument is not only ridiculous, but the Mayans or whoever created Teotihuacan in the 2nd century forward, 6th century BC forward, they knew exactly what they're doing. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the plaza.
And this is in Mexico City, modern day Mexico City, Teotihuacan.
Teotihuacan. Here's the plaza. All right. And here's the Pyramid of the Sun right here. And here is the Pyramid of the Feathered Serpent or Pyramid of the Serpent right here at the bottom, all right, at the top of this pyramid. If you follow this and go due north with it, it runs right directly through the Avenue of the Dead, perfectly right in front of the Pyramid of the Sun. All right. Absolutely marked. It hits it dead center. All right.
And that's like in line with the straight coming down the center of the western edge of this pyramid.
Exactly. And here's the craziness as far as I'm concerned about this. Here's the insanity. That if you look at how, let me see if I can blow this up a little bit more so you guys can see it. Top of the Pyramid of Sun, sorry, top of the Pyramid of Quetzalcoatl. This runs right in front of the Pyramid of the Sun, right through. I mean, it's almost an absolute perfect position from the top of this pyramid, straight through this line, right through it, right along, right in front of the avenue, right here, what they call the Avenue of the Dead. Now, why is that important? Well, it's not just. I mean, it's so perfect. Here's the dead center of the road, directly in front of that Avenue of the Dead, right in front of the Pyramid of the Sun, as it runs right through and marks right to the top of the Pyramid of the Sun. I mean, it's an absolute perfect angle. All right. Now I'm showing you this because it goes right through the Plaza del Sol, right through to the center. But here's the crazy part. Remember I told you that that 60-degree angle for the summer solstice?
Yes.
Okay.
The 60-degree angle, by the way, that came off the plate that was found in Alabama. And we're talking about Mexico
Alabama.
right now.
Yeah. Now we're in Mexico. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The sun azimuth on the summer solstice, all right, is exactly 62.44 degrees. All right. Exactly 62.44 degrees where the sun comes up on the summer solstice in Mexico. All right. Check this
We're
out.
we're that close. We're at 2 decimal points accuracy.
Bam! The dead
Wow.
center of the top of that pyramid, right off that leading edge going to the east, okay, is exactly that position where the sun comes over for the summer solstice. Okay,
Yeah.
all the arguments people have made about why they put these things in alignments they did, all right, at Teotihuacan, what becomes obvious to me is they were sitting at the top of that pyramid trying to figure out exactly what they're trying to figure out is when the solstice is, and they're using the pyramid to mark it for themselves. Okay, if we have the edge going directly this direction for the solstice, then we know exactly when the solstice is. In other words, B, what's really going on here is this entire city, this whole city area, is a calendar. The whole thing, the entire system is a calendar. All right, they're using
Yeah.
exactly as I showed you with Moundville, how they laid out their pyramids, quote unquote, their mounds, how they're laid out as positions where they can see, looking from one mound to another, know when the summer solstice is. All right, they're doing the exact same thing at Teotihuacan. All right, which was 1,000 years, 1,500 years previous. Okay, oh sorry, no, about 1,000 years previously. They're doing this. Okay, if that makes any sense. So, my personal opinion, all these arguments you're seeing in regards to how they're trying to like figure out what the calendrical system, it's ridiculous. It's just as simple as saying they created this pyramid to have its leading edge go this particular direction, so they know perfectly when that solstice is.
Yeah.
Now, all three pyramids, by the way, do the exact same thing. You there?
Yeah. Okay. When you say all 3 pyramids, you mean like in that one area,
In that
or
area,
what
yeah,
three
in that
pyramids?
area.
There's the pyramid
All
of the
three
sun and the
pyramids.
moon, and the other one
Yeah,
in
yeah, the
Teotihuacan.
Teotihuacan. Yeah, yeah. All three of them do the exact same thing because they're all aligned with each other. All right, that's what's
Yeah, it's
actually
pretty
going on.
crazy.
So, okay, now you have that going on there. All right. So, okay, so why did they offset this plaza? Why did they offset this plaza by what? How many degrees would this be? That's way more than just a few, isn't it? I mean, from here to here. I mean, right. What are they offsetting here? So when I started looking at this, that looks like somewhere in the general vicinity of somewhere around 9 to 15, 20 degrees, maybe at least. All right, is how far they're offsetting here. All right, between this
Hmm.
position and here. Now I have yet. I'm not claiming this is what's going on. I'm not claiming this is the truth. I'm not saying this is actually what's happening. But I would make the argument that maybe perhaps since you have this kind of like if this is the top of the thing and then you were to curve it outward as it goes around, that maybe perhaps what we're looking at here is would be how far off center you would have the constellation. Excuse me, how far off center the North Star would have been from dead center of the night sky from where it actually spins around. They were using that as their marking guide to where due north was, all right, not the North Star itself, but how far it actually was off, because the star constellations, they move in the aspects of the grand year. It moves in the aspect of it goes off by every 26,000 years the entire system resets itself, all right, as it moves around. They call it the Great Year. The North Star is not always going to be the North Star, and in this time frame, it was rather off by a certain number of degrees. I'm not going to stand and say this is actually what's going on. All right, I'm not going to say that's. I'm not going to make that claim, but I would say maybe perhaps that's the reason why it's not perfectly why this direction due north is not directly related, and why these things are angled the way they are. I would argue the reason they're angled the way they are is more than likely because that's the direction how off center the North Star was for Polaris from the
Right.
dead center of the how they were using it as a way to market. And that was part of the calendrical system they're doing. Again, I don't want to get too deep off into that because I cannot back that up yet. All right, I need some more data to back that up with it and confer with different other sites, Mayan sites and other locations, whether or not they did similar things with other locations. I've yet to do that, and I'm not ready to stand on that as the reason as yet. But I would make the argument 100% that you can't get away from the fact that this pyramid is sudden, that leading edge leading directly to the solar solstice, and the fact that this is here with the temple of Teotihuacan running directly in front of it. I mean, perfectly. This has got to be intentional.
Yeah.
Right? My personal opinion, at the very least, my very least summarial argument, my very smallest argument I'm going to make is that the entire city planning was planned like a calendar.
Yeah, and I mean, it's pretty convincing to me. It's strange to me when these types of arguments, when they're mathematically made, they don't come out as the most popular explanation, because a lot of times it's just like, oh, it's a tomb, even though like there's so much evidence that these pyramids are not tombs. I've seen that like argument made not only for the Egyptian pyramids, which makes no sense based on when that body was found inside it, and also I've heard the same arguments made about the temples and the pyramids in Mexico.
Yeah, I again, I think it's just. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's bad research on the part of anyone, other than to say that maybe perhaps in the modern era we have yet to really start doing things like using SunCalc, for example, which is a really cool piece of what really cool piece of something to help you see the positions of the stars, whatever else, right? We're not seeing these things from the perspective of them from 2,000 years ago, or in this particular case, it would be 200 AD, 200 BC when they first started building it. We're not seeing it from their perspective yet, but now we're able to like use like these apps and whatever else to be able to see the positions of these things. All right, we're starting to catch on and go, okay, well maybe perhaps this is what actually is going on. And the same thing is true, as I mentioned before, looking at that the exact same map. All right, they plan this out, these mounds, in my personal opinion, the connection of these angles, so they get the exact summer solstice the exact same way. If that
Yeah.
makes any sense. So to me, that's what's going on. All right,
Yeah.
that ultimately, and the calendrical systems that you see going on with Mesoamerican ones using the exact same amount of months, using the 18 months and 5 days, um, all those things were obviously either borrowed, taken, or were carried with them to the location of Mississippian culture later on, and made part of their culture too. That's where I'm going with this.
Yeah. And this again, this is we did a lot of the same information, a little bit more in depth, but also I cut it down, and that'll be coming out in a standalone video, hopefully later today, with a lot of this information. But we'll have you on again to talk about some of this other stuff, as well as the issues in academia and its relation with politics. Is there anything else you want to say as a conclusion, or was that pretty much it?
I want to say that I would like to apologize because I don't have my research to the point to where I can confirm or deny the existence of how well it's connected to Mesoamerica in what I presented that last part, other than to say that the alignments work out. I would like to be able to come back eventually and say, hey, I found all this evidence from other locations, right? And it seems, I can't do that yet. Okay. I'd
That's
love to
okay.
be able to do it, but I can't yet. All right. And I want to be able to do that. Secondly, I want to thank all the people I've worked with over the years. and say that none of the negative things I've said were about you. Not a
Yeah.
bit of them. All right. I've worked with really good people over the years, right, that were really solid. All right. And the last thing I'd like to say is that uh, I wish me and you had gotten together and got done this a little earlier. But unfortunately, in my case, I was sick for a couple months.
No
I ended up in
worries.
the hospital for a while, and I thought I was about to die, to tell you the truth. And
Oh, didn't
I'm
realize
now
that.
coming back out of it, is what it boils down to. So if you hear me stumbling and talking weird, it's because I have had some really, really bad health issues that I'm now coming back out of. And hopefully, as I'm getting stronger, I can get more back into this kind of stuff or and talk about it more effectively in the future. You know,
Well,
so
I
it's
mean,
not
you
his fault at all.
speak
It's mine.
even there. I mean, you speak better than most academics. There's lots of issues, and let's get I got your Twitter linked in the comments, so follow Cam on Twitter. I don't know how active you are there, but also, yeah, pray for Cam's health so we can keep getting. Well, not only so we can keep getting the information, but so that we can have you in there doing the good work that you're supposed to be doing.
I do
So
appreciate that, sir.
I
I really do.
appreciate you coming on, man. And my platform is open to you at basically any time. Anytime you want to come on, and I'm going to get this information down once I post the video. I'm going to get it out in a Twitter thread. I'll tag you there, and we'll. Oh, and also your YouTube channel. You do put some of this stuff on YouTube yourself. Not
I
all the
had
time, but yeah.
I put some of it out, but most of what I've been doing has been political stuff because I'm kind of active as a conservative libertarian, and there's a lot of things that my views are pretty negative towards what I've seen in politics as of late.
Yeah.
And obviously, this is not the forum for that right now. But I'd love to talk about that in the future sometime with you.
Yeah, yeah,
But
we touch on it, especially in relation to anthropology. It's they're inextricably linked. Unfortunately, they shouldn't be, but they are.
all right.
Um,
Well, I've taken up way too much of your guys' time, but I do
all right.
appreciate everyone tuning in. I hope everyone enjoyed the video. Seriously.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll end it there. Look out on my channel for that video later. Like this video and subscribe. Notifications, please, if you want to see more stuff like this. All right.